I grew up in a border town of Mexico and Douglas, which is super unique. It was hard for me to understand that. People don't understand in other regions what it is to live on the border of two countries, and not just on the border of two countries. I grew up in a place in Arizona where you're also on the border of all these tribes, and they're known tribes. These are not the tribes of California that are been, made invisible until recently. So you were aware of all of this beautiful, diverse culture early on. And I think that helps as an actor, especially when you want to be a character actor. I was not interested in just being myself. I was interested in portraying some of the people I had met and some of those stories that we hadn't heard in mainstream. Those were my interests, and those are what I was drawing from, those experiences. My mother was a theater actress. I started acting early on with her because I was able to attend her college courses with her in Tucson, Arizona on the Pima reservation at the Pima Community College. For me, theater really became a solid career where I got to be at the creative table from inception of a lot of projects. One show in particular, I had such high expectations for. I'd worked on it for 5 years, and I had worked on the main character as well as a lot of the peripheral characters, just helping the writer give them voice. And when we finally made it on the main stage in the theater that we were vying for, it was not what I had hoped for. And because my expectations were so high, I didn't know how to gauge it for what it was. Creatively, you get really stuck when you marry yourself to what you think it should be. Television, it took a long time to understand the business side of television for me. I knew it was a business. I didn't quite know how to get in. And once I was there, I got some really interesting roles. I had some opportunities to audition for recurring roles, but I never felt like I was part of a creative team or that I understood how to maneuver on a huge set. It took so long to get over the nerves for me, and all the cameras and lights and hundreds of people and 20 producers. I mean, it was a lot for me. Being right. Honest, I was too young for the opportunities that were coming. Young, right. Meaning emotionally young. I could do great character work, and once I settled into the character, I could deliver pretty quickly, especially with the roles I was getting. There were guest star roles. So they had enough of an arc where you really knew what the character was supposed to do, but there wasn't a whole bunch. I wasn't getting recurring roles. It always felt like something other. The other thing for me is, until recently with social media and with all the streaming channels, there wasn't a lot of stories that I could relate to. You got to watch your P's and Q's. You got to knock it out of the park. You got to not say hello to the wrong person. You have to understand what the protocol is with the star, with the producer. It goes on and on and on and on. You have to learn it pretty quickly. And it's fun, but it's also hard compared to theater, which I was familiar with, which has like half the amount of people that you're meeting at once usually. The most overt racist experience was when I was auditioning for a commercial. It was for the Mexican market, and I'm standing in line, and apparently I wasn't the right kind of Mexican, and the casting associate, who was a man from Mexico, walked up to me and he said, "Excuse me, but we want authentic Mexicans for this audition." And I tell this story in particular because a lot of times people who see themselves as white, I mean, I guess Anglo is a catchphrase now for people who see themselves as white as well, don't understand that that goes within the Latin culture also. And in that case, he did not like what he saw in me, which was the indigeneity and probably the Jewish background. I knew I shouldn't have gone. It was a sexualized character. I felt pressured into taking these roles because I was young and they were the only ones being offered at that time. I wanted to do comedy, and for some reason, I got represented by people who were starting to push this sort of over sexualized type of character, which is really odd because I was just this skinny kid, but whatever, that's what happened. So I started feeling pressure to please these managers, and I went to an audition, and I don't even remember what this young woman was supposed to be doing, but I walk in and there's like 6 men who are auditioning me, and to me they all look like predators. And I'm wearing a friggin' short skirt and like a tank top, trying to look all great. Probably ended up having a push-up bra. And I get in front of them and I start doing the scene, and I realized they could give a rat's ass that I'm there acting. I don't look right for the part. They think I'm cute, but I'm not who they're looking for. And they start giving me some weird ass direction to be like more something. And I said, "Oh, you mean like this?" And I lifted my skirt, flashed on my chonies, and told them all to go to hell and left. "Oh, like this?" And I walked out and I called my managers. I said, "Don't you ever send me to another audition like that again." I was probably 28 years old, and I had been, hitting the pavement for 10 years with just that much luck. And I'd seen a lot of people, get a lot further than I did in those 10 years. And I'm like, maybe I'm just in the wrong business. Maybe this just is not, I know I can act, but it's a business, and I don't have the personality for it, the temperament for it. But I get called in at the Mark Taper Forum to understudy 14 characters in a drama comedic drama, a living room drama written by Lisa Loomer. And this is what she does. She writes social dramas. And I learned 3 dialects that I didn't know. I was good at dialects at the time. I really worked hard at them. I auditioned for these 14 characters, and on the spot, Lisa Loomer says, "You have the job." And my mouth dropped because I was literally ready to quit. I was like, and I had spent like my last $200 getting dialect coaching. I'm like, this is it. This is the last hurrah. Taking my last little $200. I'm going to learn these dialects. And I got the job. It was understudy, but I worked my butt off at the Mark Taper Forum. I did 14 different characters well. They remembered it. And 3 years later, Lisa Loomer had a script for me. And it was called Living Out. And I played the lead character. And it was beautiful. It was a beautifully written production. And we did it at the Mark Taper Forum and went to New York with it the following year. I think self-acceptance. I can't say I like myself all the time. I go through massive self-doubt, but I'm not as hard on myself anymore. I still have anxiety because I run high, and I still deal with not wanting to, be out in the mix of things and wanting a lot of downtime, but now I'm okay with that. There's more acceptance. We're being accepted in a different way. There is a slightly more diverse casting now. You and I had a tough time just because we were, whatever they would call it, ethnically ambiguous and not quite in the mainstream idea of things back then. But there's so much more to do now. I have more to draw from because I traveled a lot as a young person. I lived in many different places for several years at a time. I met people from all over Europe, Africa, regions of Morocco, the Southwest. When the opportunity came, I got on Mad TV. They didn't hire me as series regular. They did hire me last minute, is what I thought, for the pilot. And I show up, and all of a sudden everybody's doing your hair and everything. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm only 20 something years old, and the hairdresser starts going, "They're considering you to be the eighth cast member here. I think there were 7 hired at the time. They're considering you." And I didn't know what to believe because nobody had told me. Nobody had called my manager to tell me this. So I felt about this big because I didn't know what was going on, and they gave me one silly sketch, which was actually really funny. But I was playing an immigrant with an accent, and I wasn't really getting to like showcase anything more than this idea of what brown people were back then. It was funny though. I don't want to say disparage it because I was super happy to get the opportunity, but I was overwhelmed. It was too much. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody that I could call and say, wow, they're saying I might be the next cast member. I don't know what to believe. I didn't have a good manager who I could call at the time and say, is this true? Have you heard something down the pipeline? Why is this the first time hearing of it? Nothing. So I had to handle it all on my own. And it was scary. 10 years later, run into the producers, Fax Barr, I think his name was. And he looks at me and he goes, you were the first person we hired on Mad TV. I was like, no, they were telling me the truth. They were just yanking my chain. When I was younger, I was sort of always combating what I would consider to be aggressively flirtatious behavior of people who were in charge, men who were in charge of whatever institution I was in. Some of it was more overt, and then there were the subtle things, and a different woman might have been okay with it. I just wasn't. And even though I wasn't, and I was uncomfortable and I would state it, it was ignored. So if you weren't part of that like good old boys club and you didn't just roll with it, you were ostracized, or I was ostracized because I didn't have a huge sense of humor about it. I wanted to work. I had a director on set, and I won't say what show, and he was much older than me, probably, in his 60s. I was at the time in my 30s, and I'm in the middle of a scene, and they paused to whatever, change the film out or whatever they were doing, and he comes over and he steals a kiss on my lips in front of everybody. Just a little smack. And another person might have giggled. I just looked down. I was opposite an actor, and he felt bad for me. Took a deep breath, and I finished my scene. But to me, that was humiliating because I wasn't really being valued or taken seriously. The best audition is the offer only audition. There is no good audition for me. I did my best to get around auditioning, 10 years of auditioning and never getting the part. I finally started figuring out how to like get roles that would highlight me and invite people in to see the plays. Study, get to know yourself, find I don't want to call it a spiritual practice, but a spiritual practice that keeps you grounded, keeps you hopeful, keeps you light, fills your life. Know that there is time as long as you are working on your craft. Don't forget to do what makes you happy and to be honest to yourself. You don't have to do everything that people want you to do. In the beginning, we feel like, well, I better say yes to everything because who am I? To turn it down. But if you know in your heart it's not going to make you happy, then you don't need to do it.
No, it's just...
God. It's something I swore I'd never do.